Hello, welcome to another episode of the Football Girl Podcast. I am your host, Melissa Jacobs. I don't know how many of you listen to the Sunday Date Night podcast. It's the right after the games are over on Sunday conversation that I have with my husband Dave, and we analyze all the action. But I could barely talk on Sunday night. It was so sad. It was like 5 hours after Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL. It's hard to do a podcast right after your quarterback tears his ACL. Just pro tip. Try to wait more than 5 hours if you can. But I was a professional. I came to the microphone and I did it. But even a few days later, it still lingers. I mean, it's devastating from a football perspective. I mean, obviously an athlete having an injury, tearing his ACL, an injury that you know he's actually going to be able to come back from, is very minor compared to some other issues out in the world right now. But I'm a 49ers fan and it sucks. It blows. And the Niners season is over. This was a maybe 9-7 team only because Jimmy Garoppolo was under center. This isn't the Philadelphia Eagles. This isn't the Eagles that have a lot of other pieces in place. You can just plop in a Nick Foles and be fine. There's some pieces in San Francisco, for sure, but not enough. Certainly not in the secondary. Certainly not really at receiver. The tight end, George Kittle, has a dropsy problem. Yeah, it's over. I hope this is one of those things that this is actually not a defense mechanism. I was going to say it was one of those things where I hope like Old Takes Exposed listens to this and then somehow it's wrong week 17 when they're headed to their, bye week of before the playoffs, but that's not going to happen. The Rams are going to run away with the NFC West. And it's just over. And the Niners, despite a lot of people's instant reaction, is they should look at Colin Kaepernick, which is my reaction to most quarterback needy teams, but not here. And first of all, I don't think Kaepernick would come back. And Shanahan already said in his presser that he wouldn't consider Kaepernick because he already decided he's not the right quarterback for his system. Of course, if you have a talented enough quarterback, then you alter your system. Although Kyle Shanahan's not really an altering the system kind of guy. So they're just going to stick with CJ Beathard, and they should. And they shouldn't try to make a trade for Teddy Bridgewater, or I don't even know if Foles is a possibility, or just any backup. And they should just get Tom Savage or whatever random free agent quarterback, Paxton Lynch, I don't know, whatever quarterback exists, and just roll with it and hopefully develop. Maybe CJ Beathard, who's, from Iowa, who was not ready for his moment last year, to put it mildly. He was like the anti-Baker Mayfield. Maybe he'll have improved a lot in year 2, but it's pretty much over, and that's fine. I'm starting to accept it and be zen about it. One thing before I get to today's guest, because I actually put it in our newsletter. We have a newsletter, the Football Girl newsletter. You can see it plastered everywhere on the website. But I'm very psyched about this idea, so I just want to use all of my platforms to get it out there. So the NFL is going to go with Maroon 5 for the Super Bowl halftime show. And that's fine. I don't think I've ever had less of an opinion about anything in my life than about Maroon 5 as a band. I might move my head a little bit to a couple of their songs, but mostly I just don't notice when they're being played. There's a lot of backlash, though. Super Bowl's in Atlanta, and that's a musically rich town. Outkast is from there. Ciara is from there. Mrs. Russell Wilson. TLC is from there. Lots of acts are from there. T.I. And there's nothing to represent Atlanta. I mean, maybe Maroon 5 is like secretly planning to bring someone up, but so I had this idea that I think should be implemented for every Super Bowl. It's actually money making for the league, which is, you have your bland, whatever, cater to middle America or whatever demographic. I guess it's a lot of America though, because Maroon 5 is very popular. They have, I think, 34 million Facebook likes. They obviously sell some albums. But to honor the Super Bowl city, which quite frankly should get a little bit more play in the Super Bowls, you kind of just say, here you are, maybe you show some scenics, and that's it. Unlike the Olympics where you just get backstory after backstory about, some of the culture of the host city. So have it sort of American Idol style, and you're going to discover new talent. You're going to have, you could do it as a one-off, or you could do it American Idol style where it is, young rappers, singer-songwriters, spoken word artists. I don't know. They all get in a room and in front of some judges. This is obviously will be televised. They do their thing, and they just have to be from Atlanta. They have to be living in Atlanta or be from Atlanta. That's the only criteria. And then you whittle it down, and you can, incorporate it into the actual broadcast. Here's where, play a snippet from each of them. Fans can vote at home, or fans can just be aware of it. So then when it gets to Super Bowl Sunday, whoever wins this competition, which I do think fans should vote on, because then they're going to be more invested in the artists themselves, then it's like this new talent discovered from the city, and they'll play one song. It won't be on the same stage as Maroon 5, because that's a whole, theatrical performance, but it's like next to them somewhere else in the field. They do their song. You take one song away from Maroon 5 or the act, and you honor the city. You literally can produce a new star from the city. I think it's a great idea. Obviously I'm biased, but I don't know. If you guys like the idea, just tell Roger Goodell. Just hit him up with a lot of text. I'm sure he'll respond. We have not seen Roger Goodell at all, by the way, this season. I haven't seen his face anywhere. Maybe opening night. But a face we have seen a lot of, luckily, is Sam Ponder. She is the host of Sunday Countdown, and she is my guest today. And she's amazing. I'm on cloud 9 even from our conversation, which was taped earlier, because she's so real. She's so real and raw, but smart, and has such a good perspective on life and her career and being a mom. We talk about motherhood, being a working mom. We talk about some of the challenges in replacing Chris Berman, which would be a challenge for anyone. Things she's taken comfort in her job. And of course, we do talk about the harassment she's experienced, which is extreme, and how she's also dealt with that. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation. As I tweeted out before I started recording, I literally wanted to high five her so many times while she was talking, but she's 3,000 miles away, and we're talking on the phone. So that didn't really quite happen. But if you are a subscriber to the Football Girl podcast, thank you very much. If you would like to be a subscriber to the Football Girl podcast, it's very easy. You just open up iTunes and you click subscribe. It literally takes 1 second. And while you're there, you can also leave us a nice rating and review, which really, really helps us. We've gotten some good ones lately, including one that actually said I was funny, which I framed already and have shown to my husband 100 times, and it's not remotely funny anymore. I had some good jokes about the person saying I was funny, and now it's I think the person, if they had a glimpse into my life, would take back that review. But I appreciate it nonetheless. Later on in the show, our do-gooder of the week is a wide receiver that hails from Arizona. See if you can guess who. And also make sure that you listen to the Fitz on Fantasy podcast. This week he has on Jen Ryan of Football Diehards talking all things Cowboys. And that should wrap up the business portion of the podcast. So without further ado, let's get right to ESPN Sam Ponder. As promised, I'm joined today by the host of ESPN Sunday Countdown, Sam Ponder. Sam, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Melissa.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about the show and some other stuff later on, but I want to start with your daughter Price. I mean, how is she doing? I mean, I know you all had just such a harrowing experience in her first couple weeks of life.
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's been such a roller coaster of emotions when you feel like you go from the joy of childbirth and like finally I don't know about other women, but I was one of those women who was like not the best pregnant person. So I'm always very excited at the end, and you know, you go through labor and delivery and you're on that high of like, all right, our family's together now, and then 3 days later, we were in emergency surgery thinking we were going to lose her, and then in the NICU after her surgery was successful, and then you're just back home, and she's fine now. So, like, other than rubbing, like, her scar cream on her every day, it's like it almost feels like it wasn't real, you know, when you go through a trauma like that. And then there are those moments where you remember. And
right.
The good thing is, I mean, I'm always trying to find like the silver lining and like the lesson from experiences like that. And it's just, I mean, I appreciate every little thing with this girl. I mean, I think part of the struggle of being a working mom sometimes, at least I'll speak for myself, has been with my first two, I don't feel like I did a good enough job appreciating, like, I know it sounds dumb, but the times that I was just sitting there feeding them, I was always trying to like also read, you know, college football or NFL articles on my phone while I was feeding them. And then, you know, when you have to change a diaper in the middle of the night, it's like, oh gosh. And with Price, I mean, just because of what we experienced, it has made, I know it sounds dumb, but like, I like changing her diaper, you know, like, just the littlest things that I didn't do a good job of being grateful for and appreciating, things that a lot of people can't take for granted because they haven't been able to experience or have been taken away from them. I feel so happy and grateful to get to be her mom. So we're super thankful for all the surgeons and all the people that helped us just kind of in this like middle of the night feeling of despair. But we're doing great now, and she's growing and getting big and chubby like the rest of them. So life is good.
Yeah, we'll see if you still like changing diapers in, you know, a year and a half.
I know. I keep thinking it's going to go away. We're only in month 2 now, so I'm like, I wonder how long this will last.
Just you need to. Well, I guess we have documented that you like changing diapers. So if you ever, you know, we'll play this back.
Yeah, now I sound like some sort of freak show.
No, Sam. You know, one of the things that I really love about you is, you know, especially as a mom myself, is just how much you seem to love being a mom and giving fans, you know, a glimpse into your life as a mom. But, you know, still what happened with Price was obviously very, very serious and life-threatening. You know, what went into your decision to make that situation public?
Yeah, it was a difficult thing because at first I was like, you know what, this is a private deal. This was like, I mean, at first I didn't even know what day it was, you know, so I was still processing. So I wasn't like documenting any of it. Like our very close friends and family knew, but
right.
I certainly wasn't putting out there publicly while we were going through it. And then I kind of had this moment where I was like, wait a second, like on social media, I try and be as honest as I can be. Like I'm not going to put up videos of my kids like when they throw a tantrum because I don't want to embarrass them in the future. But I try and like for the most part not make it look like it's always super easy. I do try and show that I enjoy being a mom and it's fun to be a mom and some of that stuff. But at the same time, I try and be kind of realistic with things. And then I realized it's not realistic if you don't show the difficult times too. And so and my husband and I talked about it a lot. I probably overthought it too much, but we kind of came to the conclusion where I decided I don't want to share her medical history. Like I'm not going to say exactly what happened to her. That's her story to tell. That's her body. That's her. And if someday she wants to like be a voice for this condition, great. But I think that should be her decision. But I did feel like I had an opportunity to connect and relate to other people who were going through pain. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned from going through this. It's like there are just silently hurting people all around us, all day, every day. And like, and not that I didn't care before, because if somebody would have said, like, I'm hurting, I would have been like, oh my gosh, like, how can I help? But I just didn't pay attention. I didn't look for signs. I wasn't like thinking about it going through my day, like, oh, that person, bumped me and was rude. I was thinking, oh, how rude are they? Instead of thinking like, this may be the worst day of their life. They may have just lost a loved one. They may, like, my perspective was so different. So I was like, you know what, if I can show that we can relate to other hurting people and connect other people by sharing some of our experience and not necessarily going into all the detail, but just sharing what it's like to be in that like dark place, then maybe it can help some people. And already I do feel like I've been able to create connections with people just through like private messages and all that, like just hurting people. And to me, if I can use this platform to encourage some people who are struggling through some things, I think mutual struggle is what connects people most. So I'm glad I did share. I'm glad we didn't tell everything, but I am glad that we opened up a little bit.
Yeah, that's some poignant stuff there. Sam, so you have 3 children now, Price, True, and Scout, which are like the 3 cutest names ever. I imagine no, they really are. They're because they're like cute baby names, but you can also envision them as adult names.
Yeah, and the good thing is they also have like other names, like True is his middle name, and Price is actually her first name, and then Scout is a nickname. So I always was thinking about that's so hard as a parent, because you're thinking about like what's cute as a kid name, and then also doesn't make you sound like you're 5 when you're 45.
Right,
like,
right.
It's a struggle.
You don't have any like Y at the end. It's not like, oh, Pricey, Chewy, Scouty.
Yeah.
But obviously we're in the NFL season now, which I imagine is a very busy time for you. I mean, just what is a typical week like for you, just balancing everything?
Yeah, I struggle with the whole concept of balance as a mom, because I've never been able to, well, I think it's as simple as this. Like if people ask you what your priorities are and you have children and you have a job, like no one's ever going to be like job first, family second.
Right.
Like you'll never hear somebody say that. But a lot of us live that way, right? Like I started to realize that about myself when I was when I had my first daughter, and we were traveling 4 days a week, and she was on over 100 flights in her first year of life. And I realized, like, okay, I'm glad she's here with me, and it's great that we're spending this time, but like I was making some sacrifices that I wasn't comfortable with. Like I was saying that yes, my family's more important than my job, but sometimes like what my life actually looked like didn't reflect that. And so I kind of had like this moment of reckoning when I found out that I was pregnant with my son. This was 2 years ago. I just realized, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, not that I didn't want to work. Like, I've worked really hard and, put in all the time and effort and all that. But I just realized, like, I want to be, and this is up to everybody feels differently about this, but my conviction was, like, I want to be around. And I do value, like, quality time, but I value quantity time, too. Like, I loved that my mom was smart and curious and adventurous and all those things, but she was also around. And I knew for myself that I wouldn't feel right if I wasn't around. So that's why, for me, this job was, I mean, a lot of people don't have the luxury of getting to choose that. And so for me, it felt amazing that I got an opportunity once I found out I was pregnant with my son to do a job that's just on the weekend. So during the week, I'm home with the kids, and I'm still, having to make sure I'm listening to news and reading a bunch of articles and talking to players and coaches and whatever. But Monday through Friday, like I am soccer mom central over here, like, which is why you might hear crying in the background at any moment.
No, totally.
That's what works for us.
Okay. And I hope you don't mind, but I would like to let our audience know one benefit for your daughter, Scout, of all of her traveling that you mentioned before this interview was that by 2, she knew what a Wi-Fi password was. So.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, it's honestly, it sounds like funny and like, and then sometimes I'm like, this might just be really bad parenting.
Right.
She has traveled so much, and that's like our one rule in our family is we don't use the iPad I shouldn't say, our one rule, one of the rules in our family is we don't use the iPad at home, but when we're traveling, I am like, feel free, live with this iPad.
Right.
So
yeah.
she is really proficient at all that kind of stuff. It's just crazy raising kids. I mean, you know, like in this generation where everything from homework to everything else is done through these screens. And we have no clue like what the impact of all that is yet. I know I'm already dealing with my addiction issues, so I can't imagine like what theirs will be growing up.
Same.
But yeah, it's a constant like battle in our house to try and figure out how much is too much.
Right. Yeah, it's just completely the same. I'm sure a lot of families can relate to that. So you're soccer mom during the week, but you obviously don't just show up on Sunday morning. What is a typical week like for you just preparing for the show?
Yeah, so a lot of it is just staying aware throughout the week. So pretty much 24/7, I either have on NFL podcasts, radio, NFL Network, ESPN, like just stuff to stay on top of whatever like the biggest issues are. Because for me, that's really what most of my prep is about, is knowing the type of conversations that are most important to have this Sunday. And some of that you're not going to know until Saturday night.
Right.
And that's, you know, to me, that's what keeps the job exciting, because I think if it was like the same type of stuff every week, after a while, you get into a groove with it, and then it's not really challenging anymore. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this job is it felt like a challenge, like 3 hours of live television.
Yeah.
Challenge. But so for me, I'm mostly just listening during the week, like staying up on what people are talking about, what types of opinions are out there, what sort of, you know, moves are being made and all that kind of stuff. And then we have meetings just over the phone on Wednesday and Friday to kind of go over because what's really important to me is that we talk about the things that our guys on the show are most passionate about. Like the great thing about our show is we've got guys who were just in NFL locker rooms, and that I want to use that to our advantage, because they're friends. Like Matt Hasselbeck is still friends with half the quarterbacks, if not more, in the NFL right now. Like Randy Moss, Charles Woodson, Rex Ryan was just in the locker room. Like, so that is a huge bonus for us, but we have to use it. You know, we have to make sure we're talking about the things that they would be talking about if they were in the locker room, or things that they specifically know. So that's really important to me during the week, is hearing what they're passionate about. And then on Saturday, I drove up to Bristol, and we have like a Saturday dinner all together, and we basically just talk through the things that the guys care about the most. And then Sunday we get out there and do it. And then I'm usually home Sunday afternoon around 4 or 5.
Nice. And you guys relocated to New York, right?
No, we're actually still in Bristol.
Oh,
so
you are?
up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah, it would be more convenient for me if we were there, but I think there's a lot of other people that would prefer it to be in Connecticut.
Yeah. Exactly. So Sam, it's your second year as host of Countdown. I mean, there was mixed reaction in year one, which is totally natural, given that Chris Berman had been there for what, 30 years, 32 years?
Since I was born. Yeah.
Because you're 32.
Yeah. He started Countdown the year I was born.
That is quite the factoid. So, you guys, wow, that's like, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. So you guys,
me too.
You guys are obviously a new cast as well. What was the biggest challenge in year one?
When you're replacing someone or stepping in the same position as someone like Chris Berman, who is like on the Mount Rushmore of sports broadcasters, like, look, let's be honest, there'd be a lot of people who are just uncomfortable with that. And then you throw in a young female, and there are going to be even more people who are uncomfortable with that. So I knew that at the beginning there might be some like, wait a second. And we were a whole new group together. I mean, Rex Ryan was brand new to TV. Randy Moss had done it a couple years. Matt was in his second year, and Charles was in his second year. So it's not like we had any TV vet that was there. I'd never hosted a 3-hour show. I had never hosted a show in the NFL. So there was so much newness that it was like all these individual, the way you see it was like a bunch of individual independent contractors, and it takes a while for you to become like a team, just like any other kind of team. And so I anticipated that. I certainly, look, it's never fun to hear like bad news about something. You want something to go really well. But I think in my heart, I knew that it would be a challenge in year one. I've just been so encouraged because, look, to me, a show's only as good as the relationships between the people who are on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like we ever didn't like each other or didn't get along. Right? We all always gotten along. We just didn't really know each other. And this year, it's made a huge difference to spend Saturday evenings together, having dinner and like getting to know about each other's families. The only person I knew on the show before this was Matt Hasselbeck. And so I think for all of us, it's been huge to spend more time together. And in my opinion, and in the opinions of some people whose opinions I value, this year has been such a huge difference already in terms of the connection that we all have as a group. And that was my goal, because I think the viewer, look, from being on College Game Day for 6 years, like I believe so strongly in the chemistry that you have as a group comes through the TV. Like people at home want to watch if they feel like they're just hanging out with you and they're a part of what you're doing and you guys like each other. And it's cheesy, but it is like kind of a little family. So we've grown a lot in that area, which has been really encouraging for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that too. Just you guys are all just a lot more playful with each other this year. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's hard to do that. It's hard to like make fun of somebody or like, just lighthearted jokes or whatever when it's like a stranger.
Right.
I met these guys for the first time. We had like a photo shoot, and you got to remember I had just had a baby last summer too. So I am like 3 weeks postpartum. I show up for this photo shoot, and it's like, "Hi, Randy Moss, nice to meet you. Let's take a picture. Everybody look like you get along." And then I didn't see him until our first show.
Wow.
So I showed up literally last year. I came in on Sunday mornings. I would get there at 8, do the show at 10. So all you're getting is like, hi, hello, let's do 3 hours of live TV together. So it's helped a ton to just spend that time and feel like you are more comfortable with them.
Mm-hmm. Sam, how different is it working in the NFL versus college?
Look, for me, it's really different, but I think a lot of that is based off the fact that I went from College Game Day out with the fans on college campuses, just madness, to in a giant studio in Bristol, Connecticut. Like it feels like kind of you ask most NFL guys and they'll tell you going from college to the NFL is going from like, oh, this is like fun, my hobby, to like, this is a business, even though obviously college football is very much a big business. But, it had that feel for me, especially at first, just because I wasn't used to ever being in a studio, and certainly not being in a studio where you're trying to generate and facilitate energy on a Sunday morning in like a dark, cold, giant room. That was a challenge. I'll never forget. Kirk Herbstreit came in to do like I can't remember if it was something with the draft or maybe a rookie or something. Anyway, he came in to do a little segment on our show last year, and he looked over at me like right before we went on. He was like, "How do you do that? Like, you're trying to pull energy out of thin air." Because it is dead silent. So I did little things. I know this probably sounds dumb, but I was like, guys, I'm not going to make a lot of demands around here. I know I'm the new kid, but we need music. Like we need 90s hip hop and R&B during every commercial break. So if you came into our studio on a Sunday, every commercial break, it's like Mace, Biggie, old school, like 90s hip hop.
That's
and
awesome.
I know it's such a dumb thing, but it's like made a difference for all of us, where you don't feel like it's just this stagnant, like stale air during a break where everyone's silent looking at their phone. So, it's little stuff like that is kind of the difference between the college environment I was in before. But I think there are ways to have it feel more like that, just like fun, relaxed environment.
Are you guys dancing during the breaks?
There is some. I don't do a whole lot. Actually, I will say this. Rex Ryan is probably the biggest dancer of the group. Believe it or not.
I can see that actually.
Should not show on TV, but he gets after it every now and then.
Okay. Now we have to see it. We're gonna I'm gonna start a movement where we hound. I don't know. Is it Seth Markman or whoever it is? Is he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start putting some of that up on like Insta stories or something.
Okay.
I'll get his okay.
Yes. Okay. As the ringleader, you interject your opinion from time to time, but obviously you're mostly kind of playing orchestrator for the analysts there. How do you feel about the NFL these days? Like, you came in year one, it was obviously, one controversy after another. Now we have roughing the passer. It's always something.
I will say I'm grateful that it's this stuff rather like last year was a rough year to start in the NFL.
Yeah.
Because I went from like fun, it's college game day, hey, to like, hey, we're going to talk about racism and sexism every week. I was like, oh, okay. And I understand like those are serious, important issues that need to be talked about. But when you're like brand new to the NFL and we're like, hey, first segment, 20 minutes on racism, I think for all of us on our show, we were like, could we not? Like it was parts of it were just depressing. And I think that's how, as much as obviously these conversations need to be had, I think everybody just got fatigued, like it was sports in so many ways, as much as they, can be connected to social issues. For most people, this is like entertainment and escape. And there's a fine line between like addressing some of the issues and overdoing it. And I think personally, I think our group feels this way. We just overdid it. So in year one, it was heavy. So in terms of like the NFL now, look, I knew a few weeks ago when we had like an NFL ESPN meeting and they brought in the different people from the NFL to talk to us about rule changes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there was like a full-on debate. I thought Bill Polian was going to lose it when we were in there debating these roughing the passer. They knew this was coming. So this is not a surprise to the people who made these decisions. They knew there was going to be a lot of pushback. But basically, and the NFL doctor was there too, and basically they just said, like, hey, we have to do this. This isn't like a choice of, oh, do we want to try and make this safer? Like, we're at that point now, and they didn't go into detail as to why, but that, like, this isn't an option anymore. And, you can make your own assumptions about why that is and the money behind. I mean, look, it's always about money in one way or the other. But so, look, I totally understand the frustration. I mean, some of it, especially, look, when you're married to a quarterback, you sit there and normally hear all the comments about how things are not the quarterback's fault and everything. But like when my own husband who played the position is like, that's ridiculous. Like same thing as Joe Flacco and Big Ben and all those guys coming out saying like, this is ridiculous and it's hurting the product and all that. So I think I understand the thought process behind it. Like you got to make the game safer and you got to protect your big money guys. And obviously the big money guys are the quarterbacks. So I get that. I just think maybe we need to use a little more common sense, not like a strict interpretation of the rule.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So your predecessor, Chris Berman, was very open about his fanhood. He was 49ers fan, always picked the Niners and Bills. That was his thing for 32, oh my God, years. Do you have a team? Would you feel comfortable incorporating that into the show?
Sure, of course. I think it's ridiculous. Like, look, first of all, I don't consider myself a journalist or that's not the role I've ever been in my opinion. I've always either done hosting or like sideline reporting, which there's a fine line. There are some people who are absolutely journalists doing sideline reporting. I never saw myself as that. And I've always thought that as long as you disclose your fandom, then it's totally fine. Like, why would you want to work in sports if you weren't a fan?
Right.
Right. How would you get here in the first place? So for me, I mean, look, I grew up in Phoenix, so I was a Phoenix Cardinals fan at the time. But that's, I mean, I hate to even say that because we didn't have the money to go to games, so I wasn't going to games. And we didn't have cable most of my life and didn't even have TV for a while, so I didn't get to watch as much as I'd like to. It was more a result of me living in the town and my dad coaching football at the local high school and, being that kind of fan. I love Jake Plummer. Like he was a big deal for us, especially from ASU. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then when you marry into it, your fandom gets all screwed up because like you root for one team and your closet is full of their colors and then that doesn't work out. So then you hate that team. You move on to the next one. You're a big
fan. You have burning ceremonies.
Yeah. Yes. So I've talked to wives before about that, how like the colors of your closet change so drastically and you're like donating all this stuff that you got. But yeah, if I ever like had fan feelings, I try and disclose it.
Right. How many teams was Christian on?
He went from the Vikings to the Raiders to the 49ers to the Broncos. So,
okay.
And the last two were like short stints.
Right. Well, you're the first female host of Sunday Countdown. And, next week, I understand you're going to be on a panel at the ESPNW Summit in some fancy hotel in Southern California called Breaking Barriers in Sports Media. How much do you think about that, Sam, about the fact that you're breaking a barrier?
To be honest, not at all. I didn't think about it at all until it was brought up to me when I accepted the job, and then people started asking me about it. So you're like, well, shoot, I got to come up with an answer for this. My main like genuine feeling is that I am reaping the benefits of women who have gone before me who weren't in this position. So like I could list them for days, but the women who played the role that they were offered and were never really offered a position like this and worked their butt off for 30, 40 years. And now because of that, women like me are given opportunities earlier on in life. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. I'm also really grateful for women like Stephanie Drewley at ESPN, who, as she climbed the ladder, like kept bringing women with her. And she was a huge part of the reason I was even considered for this job. And, so I'm really grateful to not only the women who went before me in on-camera positions, but women like Steph who really have made it a priority to give women this opportunity. And to me, look, in some ways it's burdensome. And I say that like it's all relative, but it's somewhat burdensome to know like, hey, when not that many women, if any, have been given a position like this, you sure don't want to screw it up because you screw it up. And then the fear is like, well, are they going to give the next one a chance? So I wrestle with that. I do feel a lot of responsibility for not making the show perfect or that the ratings have to be a certain way, but more that like I do good work and that I put in the effort and that I know what I'm talking about and that I ask good questions. A huge part of my role, the way I see it, is to represent the fan, like up on that set. What are fans thinking when they hear something Randy Moss says? Like, what would they ask in return? Like, what are they confused about? What do they need clarification about? What are they going to challenge somebody on? So I try and play that role as well as I can. But yeah, I try not to think about it too much in terms of like breaking a certain barrier. Because I think sometimes if you overthink that, it can cause some anxiety and some extra pressure that you just don't need.
Right. That's a good point. You mentioned Steph Drewley, and one of the things I think that ESPNW Summit highlights is just there's so many women at ESPN that have prominent voices, like so much more than any other sports media company. But with these voices, sadly, comes harassment that is just rooted in misogyny. Obviously what you've dealt with is well documented, Sam, but how did it make you feel last year, when ESPN was going to put a show on its airwaves in concert with a company that is basically the poster child for harassment now?
Yeah, look, my take on this from the beginning is I was asked, I gave my opinion behind the scenes about some different things. And what I finally came to was like, look, I wasn't going to say, you have to get rid of these people. These are terrible people, whatever. You can make your own judgment on that kind of thing. I just felt strongly that as a woman who, like you said, this company has done an incredible job, better than anybody else, at putting women in positions of influence, I'm also not going to shut up. Like, I'm not going to not say what I think and not stand up, because my concern was always like, look, when I'm out there bragging on this company and saying how great it is that we put women in these positions, and then someone asks a question, but what about this? Or there's some hypocrisy here. I want to make sure I can give an honest answer. So my feeling from the beginning was like, look, I'm not going to be silent about this. Like, I'm going to say what I think, and you can agree or disagree, and that's fine. I'm not trying to like ruin anybody's life or anything like that. I'm just trying to speak up and use my voice, which is a scary thing. Look, in any situation, I don't care what it is, and some are more challenging than others. But like, when you finally get to that place where you have a bit of a platform, the thing everybody always talks about having, and you have a voice, like when you first start using it, it's scary, because pretty much most of my career, I sat back and listened. And look, I especially when you're young, I highly recommend that. Like it's great to sit and listen and watch and observe and defer to other people who are more experienced, et cetera. But when you finally get to that place where you're like, well, shoot, I think it's time. Like, I think it's time to speak up and say something. It can be scary, and there are repercussions, and there are bad things that happen, and, there are going to be people that don't like it. But the greatest thing for me over the last year is just learning, and this has been so empowering for me, especially in terms of the things that I feel like I'll be able to tell my daughters someday, is to be able to say, like, I walked through it. Like the biggest fear for so many people who have any desire to people please, which I did and still do in different ways, but is that, like, what if people don't like me? What if people hate me and say mean things and tell me I'm ugly and fat and all this stuff, like all the things that you fear, like that give you that pit in your stomach when you see it in print. I've taken it all and I am fine. Like, being able to go through, like, walk through that. I know that there's still more to come, I'm sure. I mean, I get stuff literally every day.
Right.
But to know that, like, I can handle worst case scenario because, my identity is not in this,
Yeah.
Like, I don't, even if I lost my job tomorrow, if it all went away, like, this is not what makes me okay. And I'm not saying it's fun or it's, like, enjoyable to hear terrible things about yourself, but, like, I know who I am, and I know that other people have no control over that. Like, I get to choose that. And I also know from what we talked about earlier in terms of what I've gone through with my family recently, like, life is so much bigger than that little bubble.
Right.
And even if that bubble pops and I'm not even a part of it anymore, like, life is still good. And so that's helped me handle that kind of stuff a lot. And filtering people out. Lots of mute buttons. That helps too.
Yeah. I know. I guess I don't want to dwell on that company per se, but yeah, I mean, there's, and they're, by the way, they are certainly not the only ones who promote misogyny at all. But yeah, I mean, are there other solutions? The mute button. I mean, have you like hired someone to just block and report people? Like, what?
No, I mean, there's an idea. But no, one thing that I did is Twitter has like a filter thing that I didn't even know about till recently. This would have saved me a lot of time, but where you can filter out like people who don't follow you and people who don't have a verified email address. Because the people who have the nastiest stuff to say are usually, not always obviously, but are usually the anonymous, like, egg type people, right, or the people who just have like a picture of a dog or something, Yeah. And so once I filtered that out, so I don't even see their comments, like, that has made a huge difference, because my thing is I have no problem with criticism. Like, if you're going to do this job, you have to, I would say, embrace criticism. Like, that's one of the things I talked to my bosses about the last year. Like, I want feedback. I want to know when I mess up. Like, I'm a bit of a competitor. Like, I want to get better. So it's not a matter of like, oh, I don't want someone to say, hey, you stumbled over that, like, you suck today. Whatever, I can handle that. I just wanted to filter out the stuff like, look, I get everything from naked pictures of people to like pictures of the front of my house to I hope you die to this is how you should kill yourself and your kid. I mean, horrific stuff. And that's the kind of stuff where I was like, look, this isn't criticism. This is scary, and I don't want to fill my mind with like this level of negativity. It's best that I don't even see it. Like, I know there's a dark web out there. I just didn't want to be a part of it. So using that filter stuff has helped a ton.
But when you get a picture of the front of your house or death threat, I mean, is that a police report situation ever? I mean, or even does like ESPN or does any company that with an employee that's being harassed to that extent have a responsibility to step in some way?
So when I was on College Game Day, we had I don't really know what my situation is right now. It's probably something I should ask about. But on game day, we had amazing security guys that were like former FBI, former NYPD. And they would call me and be like, hey, you probably didn't see it, but like, we monitor all your stuff and we saw X, Y, and Z. Here's what we're doing. We found, because they can find anybody like with the IP address and all that kind of stuff. And so there have been a few situations where it's gotten to that. I've had like stalkers in the past where I had to get like restraining orders and just some crazy stuff. And look, that is life for women in this industry. And it's the thing that drives me nuts is when people are like, that's what you signed up for. I'm like, no. There was no process in which anybody ever was like, hey, if you want this job, you're going to be like vigorously harassed to the point where like you're scared that your children are sleeping in the next room because people like show up at your house. I mean, no, that's not like that's not what I signed up for. I signed up to like be a reporter for the Phoenix Sun. Right. Is like what I wanted to do. So yeah, that's a little frustrating. But honestly, the sad thing is, and I think a lot of women struggle with this, is deciding, do I want to go through the process? Like there have been numerous occasions where I'm like, okay, this is illegal. Like I want to call the cops. I want to, like handle this. But then you're thinking about like what you're going to have to go through in order to handle it. Like it's not just like, oh, it's a hassle to do it. Just that like the publicity that comes with stuff like that, having to like deal with some of these like, I mean, horrific human beings, which as a mom of like 3 children under 4 right now, I just feel like I need to see the world in as positive of a light as I can. Like there's already enough negativity that the thought of going to court and handling stuff that way, I've just, and everybody has their own convictions about this, I just have chosen to ignore most of it. But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy world out there, as you know.
Yeah. How does Christian react to all of this?
It depends on the day. There are days as a husband, I think, that like, and this is terrible, but that like you're like hoping you see somebody on the street.
Right. Exactly.
Because it's maddening. But then like, look, for us, like we're trying to teach our children in the power of forgiveness and loving people when they are not lovable and being kind when other people are unkind. And man, is it hard to live that out. Like it's really easy to say to your 4-year-old, like, I know that girl on the playground was really mean, but like she's probably going through a hard time and let's be really kind anyway. And then you're like, well, crap, I got to live that too. Because we know one thing about kids is like, it doesn't matter what we tell them, they're going to live how we live, like they're going to copy what they see. And so I think for him, that's been a struggle too, because there are times you just want to lose it and go off on people, especially when it's your spouse and there's that defensive. I mean, I experienced a different version of it when he was playing where like, people just forget that it's a human being who has insecurities and fears just like everybody else. But I think it's actually made us closer because like we talked about before, like mutual shared struggle brings people closer together. And so for us, we've kind of tried to see it like that, an opportunity to like make our bond stronger.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of alluded to this, but you do plan to talk to your children about this aspect of your job when they're old enough?
Well, shoot, we don't have to talk about it about their job. They're going to learn this stuff in middle school.
Well,
like, look,
true.
As horrific as some of our stuff has been, like, this is daily life for kids growing up now. Like, I was telling someone this earlier. This is the first time in human history where our value as human beings is quantifiable. Like, by the number of followers you have, the number of likes. Imagine being a teenage girl, a junior high girl, and you're comparing, like, well, this girl got this many likes on her picture, and these people said on my picture that I'm ugly, or I'm like, I can't imagine how much that would have changed my view of myself in junior high. Like, it was hard enough to just, go through puberty, much less handle all the negativity out there where now, like, and obviously, even the kids who are, quote unquote, doing the bullying, like, they're a mess themselves. They're struggling. They've got issues at home. These are all like broken kids trying to figure it out, saying all this horrific stuff about each other. Like, our kids don't have an escape from that. Like, unless we're going to go out and live somewhere with no Wi-Fi, that would be very concerned, then you can't keep them away from it. You have to just help them navigate it. And so that's why for us, like, I'm trying to learn this stuff right now so I can teach it based off of how I've lived, not just how I wish I would have lived, like not allowing either the positive comments people give you or the negative comments really get to your heart. Like, I don't want to be dependent on people saying, you're awesome, yay, like, and then valuing those strangers, but then somebody says, you're terrible, you're ugly, and all of a sudden I'm broken. Like, no, I'm not going to give other people that power over me. And it's easier said than done, but I'm hoping that as I get older, that's something I get better and better at, so I can teach my daughters that at an early age.
So in terms of just the sports broadcasting, harassment stuff, I mean, how does it get better? Is it more women in these positions of leadership? Is it the men having a different perspective? What's going to happen to make things better for all of us?
Yeah, I think it's both. Look, exposure is everything, right? There are a lot of people who, like, look, you click on any comment about any female broadcaster who's doing, like, when Beth Mowins does the NFL or Jeff Mendoza does MLB. I'm telling you, the vast majority, and this is just my opinion, but vast majority of those people, it's just because they can't get over the voice. Like, and not because they're horrific sexist people. Now, there are some of those too. But some people, it's just they haven't been exposed to it. They're not used to it. And the more they hear different voices, the more they'll grow to appreciate it. It's the reason that it's important for us, for our kids to be around other kids of all different races and backgrounds, like, because exposure is everything. The more you connect with other people in their humanity who are different than you, the more you can appreciate them as people. And I think that's been one of the challenges in this industry. Is not necessarily because we're bad at our jobs, although, look, some of us haven't done a great job at times. Shoot, myself included. Like, it's not about that. It's just about time. Like, for some people, it's going to take some time to get used to hearing a female voice on something. So those aren't the people I'm really concerned about in terms of, like, harassment or whatever. I'm just not going to fight the battles with people who are so broken and miserable that, like, it really doesn't matter what you do. Like, there are times where you could watch a woman do something incredible and she's still going to get, like, disgusting comments. Like, some of the best work, in my opinion, that I've done that was, like, the most serious and actually, like, kind of made a difference, I'll immediately get guys, like, sending me pictures of themselves. Like, it's just, there are some people who are so depraved. And yes, I'm going to say some people who are just evil, that it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to try and fight a losing battle there. I still try and be, like, as kind as possible, but you never get that stuff in person. Never. Like, I live in New York City. I'm around people all day, every day. And I have never once, out of all the horrible things that people will say to me online, I've never once had someone come up on the street and say a word or even shout something across the street. Like, it's just the boldness that people get on the internet because they're in their safe place, like, they feel like they can't be touched when they're at home, and they feel like you're not a real person anyway. So it's totally fine to go after you. So I don't know how we fix that. I do think the more, and that's why people in positions of power and influence behind the scenes, people like Steph Julie, are so important, because the more that we have women or men who understand the value of women in these positions who are behind the scenes, the more we'll see women making strides on TV. And we've come a long way. Obviously, we have a ways to go, but I definitely feel like we've made huge strides.
Totally. And I'm sure you saw the news this morning that Andrea Kramer and Hannah Storm are going to be broadcasting the Amazon Prime Thursday night football games.
Yes.
Which is,
Yes, I'm excited to see it.
Amazing. So in closing, you, as you said, you are a real person, even though some people might not think that. You are definitely a real person, as evidenced by this conversation. And, what is it that you would be doing, do you think, if you weren't in sports broadcasting?
Well, I jokingly say I would say it's a joke, but it was like real life for me. I always say, like, future Walmart greeter is on my Twitter profile.
Yeah.
And that's because I actually tried to do that, because jobs like that to me, and it doesn't have to be that in particular. Like, I have, and this is where I struggle, because I think this industry can make you kind of cynical towards people, but I have always just loved being around people. And I don't know exactly what the job would be. For a while, I thought I would do, my parents do some different mission work. They run an inner city basketball and football program in Phoenix, and then we started it in the Middle East and in Zimbabwe. And so I think I would be probably more involved in that and traveling and doing all that kind of stuff if, well, one, I didn't have 3 small children and the job, but anything where I can develop relationships at work. I've never been a big, like, my husband is great with numbers and math and all that kind of stuff. Like, I need the interaction with people. And sometimes that's a struggle, but I think I would be doing something that's somewhat social. So that's obviously really general, but this is all I ever wanted to do. You know, my goal was to be the next Ahmad Rashad. Like, I used to grow up watching NBA Inside stuff, and I thought he was the coolest. And so this has all been, like, so far beyond really what I dreamt up for myself, that at this point I'm like, look, if this lasts another year or another 10 years or whatever, like, I'm just grateful for what I've gotten to experience so far. And if I got to move on to something totally unrelated, like, I'll be fine doing that too. I'm just really grateful for the journey so far.
Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Sam. You can catch Sam on ESPN Sunday Countdown every Sunday from 10 to 1 o'clock Eastern Time, and follow Sam on Twitter at Sam_Ponder and Instagram at Samantha Ponder. I really, really enjoyed chatting with you, Sam. Thank you so much.
So good to talk to you, Melissa. Keep up the great work.
Special shout out to our do-gooder this week, Larry Fitzgerald of the Arizona Cardinals. Larry picked up the tab for all diners at a Scottsdale deli over the course of 5 hours last Tuesday to raise funds for its terminally ill owner, Joe Casella. Casella and his wife Tina have owned Casella's Italian Delicatessen since 1977, and they want to see it survive Joe. So Fitzgerald encouraged diners to donate to his medical fund in exchange for the free meals, but he also gifted the Casellas some new customers in the process. Joe and his family are such a big part of the community and a true example of a family-run restaurant that cares about their neighbors and community, Fitzgerald said in a news release. When I met Joe and his family, I saw something special, the same thing customers see when they meet the Casella family, people who truly care about their neighbors and know their customers on a personal level. And if they don't know you yet, they do when you come in, and they don't forget you. Nice work, Larry. And that's going to wrap us up for this episode of the Football Girl Podcast. Thank you to ESPN Sunday Countdown, Sam Ponder. Thank you to my producer, Daniel Baker. And thank you to all of you guys for listening, as always, or for the first time. If you like what you hear, please consider giving us a good rating or review on iTunes, and you can subscribe there or anywhere else that you like to consume your podcasting. We'll be back next week with another fabulous, amazing, unbelievably great guest. Have a great week 4, everyone.